My grandfather built everything from nothing. He grew up in a small house with a dirt floor. His father was a factory worker. His mother cleaned houses. He had nothing except a sharp mind and a willingness to work harder than anyone else. He started a small construction company when he was 25. He worked 16-hour days. He slept on job sites. He reinvested every penny. By the time he was 40, he owned a fleet of trucks. By the time he was 50, he owned a development company. By the time he was 60, he was a wealthy man. But he never forgot where he came from. He was generous with his money. He paid for college tuitions. He helped with down payments on houses. He set up trusts for his grandchildren. He wanted us to have the opportunities he never had. Bendai was his first grandchild. He held me when I was born, he cried. I have a photo of that moment on my nightstand. He is looking down at me with so much love. I look at that photo sometimes when I need to remember that someone believed in me. My grandfather and I were close. I spent summers at his house. He taught me how to fish and how to garden and how to negotiate. He told me stories about his childhood, about the struggles, about the sacrifices, about the people who helped him along the way. He told me to always be honest, always work hard, always take care of family. He said family is the only thing that matters in the end. I believed him. I did not know that some members of my family did not share his values. When I was 10 years old, my grandfather set up a trust for me. He did it for all his grandchildren, a fund that would pay for college, or a down payment on a house, or a startup business. He did not want us to struggle the way he had struggled. He wanted us to have a safety net. He put my oldest uncle in charge of the trust. My uncle was a banker. He seemed responsible. He seemed trustworthy. He seemed like the obvious choice. My grandfather trusted him. We all trusted him. For years I did not think about the trust. I was busy with school and work and life. I assumed the money was there. I assumed my uncle was managing it properly. I assumed my family would never steal from me. I was wrong. The first sign of trouble came when I graduated from college. I had student loans. Not a lot, but enough to be a burden. I asked my uncle about the trust. I asked if I could use some of the money to pay down my loans. He said the trust was not liquid right now. He said the investments were tied up. He said I should be patient. He said the money would be there when I really needed it. I believed him. I was patient. I paid my loans myself. I worked extra shifts. I lived in a small apartment. I drove an old car. I made it work. A few years later, I wanted to buy a house. A small house. Nothing fancy. Just something of my own. I asked my uncle about the trust again. I asked if I could use the money for a down payment. He said the market was down. He said it would be a bad time to sell. He said I should wait. He said the money would be worth more later. I believed him again. I waited. I saved. I rented for 5 more years. Then my grandfather got sick. The diagnosis came in the spring. Lung cancer. Stage 4. It had spread. There was nothing they could do except make him comfortable. The doctors gave him 6 to 8 weeks. I drove to see him immediately. I sat by his bed. I held his hand. I told him I loved him. He squeezed my fingers. He said, I love you too, Julia. You have always been my favorite. I laughed. I said, do not tell the others. He said, I will not. It is our secret. We talked for hours. About his life, about his regrets, about his hopes for the family. He asked about my job, and my apartment, and my garden. He asked if I was happy. I said I was trying to be. He said that was all anyone could do. Then he asked about the trust. He asked if I had ever used any of the money. I said no. I said Uncle David said it was not a good time. I said I was waiting. My grandfather's face changed. Something flickered in his eyes. Concern, suspicion. He said, David told you to wait. I said yes. He said, for how long? I said, for years. My grandfather was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I need to make some phone calls. He did not tell me what he was investigating. He did not tell me what he expected. He just said, trust me. I will take care of everything. I trusted him. I always had. My grandfather was weaker now. He used a wheelchair. He could not walk up the stairs anymore. But he insisted on being in the living room, in his favorite chair. In front of his family, everyone came. My aunts and uncles, my cousins, their spouses, their children. The living room was packed. People were talking and laughing and catching up. No one knew why we were really there. I sat in the back, invisible, where I always sat. My grandfather rolled into the room. Everyone went quiet. He looked around at all of us. His eyes were tired but sharp. He was studying us, measuring us, seeing us. He said, "Thank you for coming. I wanted to see everyone one last time. But I also have some business to discuss." Menges, my oldest uncle, said, "Dad, this is not the time." My grandfather said, "It is exactly the time. I am dying. I will not be able to fix this later, so we are fixing it now." Ben, he asked who had been managing the money he set aside for the grandchildren. My uncle raised his hand. He said, "I have, Dad." My grandfather said, "Show me the accounts." Bland. My uncle said, "I do not have them with me." My grandfather said, "Then go home and get them." "I will wait." My uncle left. The room was silent. No one knew what was happening. No one knew what my grandfather suspected. My uncle came back 2 hours later. He was carrying a folder. His hands were shaking. He gave it to my grandfather. My grandfather opened the folder. He read for a long time. He turned pages. He studied numbers. He made notes on a pad beside his chair. Then he looked up at my uncle. He said, "There is nothing left. Where is the money?" My uncle said, "I do not know." My grandfather said, "You were the trustee. You were responsible. Where is the money?" My uncle started sweating. He said, "The market went down. There were bad investments. We lost money." My grandfather said, "How much?" My uncle said, "All of it." My grandfather said, "You lost all of it." My uncle said, "Yes." My grandfather said, "I do not believe you." The room was silent. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. You could hear people breathing. My grandfather said I had an accountant review the accounts before this meeting. There were no bad investments. There were no market losses. There were withdrawals, large withdrawals, made over many years, made by you. My uncle said nothing. My grandfather said, "Where did the money go?" My uncle started crying. He said, "I needed it. The business was struggling. The kids needed braces. We wanted a bigger house. I was going to pay it back. I was going to put it all back." Landed. My grandfather said, "But you did not." My uncle said, "I could not." My grandfather said, "You stole from your nieces and nephews. You stole from your own family." My uncle said, "I am sorry." My grandfather said, "Sorry does not put the money back." My uncle broke down completely. He confessed to everything. He had been stealing from the trust for 15 years. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. He used the money to prop up his failing business, to pay for his children's private schools, to renovate his house, to take expensive vacations. He told himself he would pay it back. He told himself the business would turn around. He told himself no one would ever know, but the business never turned around. And he never paid it back. And now there was nothing left. My other aunts and uncles were shocked. Some of them were angry. Some of them were crying. Some of them were silent. My cousins were devastated. They had counted on that money. For college, for houses, for their children's futures. It was gone. All of it, stolen by their own father, their own uncle. I sat in the back of the room, invisible, where I always sat. I watched my family fall apart. I watched my uncle sob. I watched my aunts scream at him. I watched my cousins turn on each other. My grandfather raised his hand. He said, "Stop." Everyone went quiet. Band said, "There is more." He looked at my aunt, his oldest daughter. He said, "You knew." Back to my aunt's face went pale. She said, "I did not know." My grandfather said, "The accountant found transfers to your personal account. Large transfers. Made over many years." My aunt stuttered. My aunt started crying. She said, "David told me it was a gift. He said the trust had extra money. He said I deserved it because I was his wife." My grandfather said, "You did not ask questions." My aunt said, "I trusted him." My grandfather said, "You trusted him more than you trusted me." Mendy, my aunt, had no answer. My grandfather said, "You are both responsible. You both stole from this family." Landia. My aunt said, "I am sorry." My grandfather said, "Sorry does not put the money back." Out. He turned to the rest of the family. He said, "I am going to do everything I can to recover the money. But I cannot promise anything. The legal process is slow. And I do not have much time." He looked at my uncle. He said, "You will repay every penny, even if it takes the rest of your life." Even if you have to sell your house and your cars and everything you own, you will repay it." My uncle nodded. He was still crying. He could not speak. My grandfather said, "This meeting is over. Everyone leave." Except Julia. Everyone filed out of the living room. Some were crying, some were angry, some were silent. They did not look at me. They did not look at each other. They just left. Blands. When the room was empty, my grandfather motioned for me to come closer. I knelt beside his chair. He took my hand. He said, "I am sorry. I should have chosen someone else to manage the trust. I should have checked on the accounts. I should have protected you. I said you did not know." No one knew. "Ben," he said, "I should have known. I trusted him because he was my son. I thought blood meant something. I thought family was safe. I said family is supposed to be safe." He said, "Sometimes it is not. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you the most." He squeezed my hand. He said, "I am going to make this right. I am changing my will. Everything I have will go to you. The house, the savings, the investments, everything." I said, "I cannot take everything." "What about the others?" He said, "The others have already taken enough. They stole from you. They stole from your cousins. They stole from me. They do not deserve anything more." I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." He pulled out a document. He had already had his lawyer prepare it. He signed it. He handed it to me. He said, "Keep this safe. Do not tell anyone. Not yet. When I am gone, you can decide what to do." I took the document. I put it in my bag. I kissed his forehead. I said, "I love you, Grandpa." He said, "I love you too, Julia. You have always been my favorite. Do not tell the others." I laughed. I said, "It is our secret." He smiled. It was the last time I saw him smile. My grandfather died 3 weeks later. He was surrounded by family. My uncle was there. My aunt was there. My cousins were there. I was there. He did not speak much at the end. He was tired. He was in pain. He was ready. But before he died, he looked at me. He nodded. I knew what he was saying. He was telling me to be strong, to be brave, to fight for what was mine. I nodded back. I squeezed his hand. I told him I loved him. He closed his eyes. He stopped breathing. He was gone. The funeral was large, hundreds of people. My grandfather had touched many lives. People spoke about his generosity, his hard work, his integrity. My uncle spoke. He talked about what a wonderful father my grandfather had been. He cried. People comforted him. They did not know what he had done. They did not know he had stolen from his own nieces and nephews. They did not know he was a thief. I sat in the back, invisible, where I always sat. I watched my uncle perform. I watched my family pretend. I watched them act like nothing had happened. I kept the document in my bag. I had not told anyone about it. The reading of the will was held at my grandfather's lawyer's office. Small room, wood-paneled, heavy curtains. My family sat around a large table. My uncle, my aunt, my cousins, my other aunts and uncles. I sat at the end, invisible, where I always sat. The lawyer opened the envelope. He read the will. My grandfather had left everything to me. The house, the savings, the investments, the cars, the art, everything. Then my uncle stood up. He said that is not possible. He would never do that. Lant, the lawyer, said the will is valid. It was signed 3 weeks before his death. He was of sound mind. There were witnesses. My aunt said we will contest it. The lawyer said you can try. But the will is clear, and there are other documents. Letters your father wrote explaining his decision. Man, he handed out copies of the letters. My grandfather had written a letter to each member of the family, explaining why he had made his choice, explaining what my uncle had done, explaining that he could not trust them anymore. My uncle read his letter. His face went pale. He started crying. He left the room. My aunt read her letter. She started crying too. She did not leave. She just sat there, with tears running down her face. My cousins read their letters. Some were angry. Some were sad. Some were confused. Manbao, some were confused. I read my letter. It was short. It said, Julia, you have always been the one who reminded me of myself. You work hard. You are honest. You do not take what is not yours. I am proud of you. I love you. Take care of my things. I folded the letter. I put it in my pocket. I did not cry. I was too numb to cry. It has been 2 years since my grandfather died. I live in his house now. I sleep in his bedroom. I sit in his chair. I garden in his garden. I have kept his things, his books, his photographs, his fishing poles, his tools. They remind me of him. My uncle did not contest the will. He knew he would lose. He sold his house. He sold his cars. He sold everything he owned. He is still paying back the money he stole. He will be paying for years. Maybe forever. My aunt divorced him. She could not look at him anymore. She moved to another state. She does not call. She does not visit. She pretends we do not exist. My cousins do not speak to me. They blame me for taking their inheritance. They do not blame their father for stealing their trust. They blame me. People are strange that way. I do not care. I have my grandfather's house, his memories, his love. I have peace. Bemji, I still think about that family meeting sometimes. The way my grandfather asked one question. The way everything fell apart. The way he looked at me and nodded. The way he told me to be strong. I am strong now. Stronger than I was. Stronger than I knew I could be. My family spent my inheritance for years. They thought I would never find out. They thought I would never fight back. They thought I would stay invisible forever. Then my grandfather asked one question, and everything changed. If you are going through something similar, here is my advice. Pay attention to the people who manage your money. Ask questions. Demand answers. Do not assume that family means safety. Sometimes family means the greatest danger. Keep records. Save documents. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if you find out someone has stolen from you, do not let them get away with it. Fight back. Hire a lawyer. Take them to court. Do not let guilt or shame or family pressure stop you. Man, you deserve what is yours. You do not have to apologize for wanting it. You do not have to feel bad for protecting yourself. My family spent my inheritance for years. They thought I was invisible. They thought I did not matter. They thought I would never know. My grandfather knew. He saw everything. He asked one question. And the truth came out. I did not get revenge. I got justice. And justice is sweeter than revenge could ever be. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more tales of family, betrayal, and the courage to fight for what is yours. Click the bell for notifications. And remember, you are not invisible. You matter. What is yours is worth fighting for.